Alright guys, this is Wes again with another video about vehicle maintenance. Now today, working on my 92 F-150 again as usual. We're going to be rotating the tires in an X formation. I'm going to be checking out the brakes, just to kind of give an overview of what's going on inside your braking system as you drive. Just to give you an idea of what to look for along the way, such as worn out brake pads or brake shoes, worn out drums or rotors, just to kind of give you an oversight to have you safely driving, things that a lot of people just kind of overlook. But first, what you're going to need is a lug bolt wrench. This one here, I bought it, I think it was Walmart, for like 20 bucks. Now, if you notice, each one of these points has a different size socket on it. I purchased it specifically for 2 points. The first one is I have 4 different lug nut sockets here, so that I'm not just specifically labeled down to this one truck. That's all I can use the lug bolt wrench on. And 2 is the stock one only has a single bar that's bent at like a 45-degree angle, so you don't really get all the bite and the grip that you'd want to and all the leverage. Whereas this one is completely 90 degrees to the wheel, so that when you got the lug nut on, you've got 90 degrees of leverage. Now that's my personal suggestion, is if you're going to buy one like that. As far as everything else you need is a set of jack stands. These are rated for 2 tons. Got one already under the truck. I'll show you here in just a second. What you want to do is turn the truck off. Put the emergency brake on. If it's an automatic, pull it up and park. If it's a 5-speed, again, put your emergency brake on. And since I'm canted downhill, you need it to be in reverse. If you're pointed uphill or on a slight grade uphill or downhill, whatever, you want to have the emergency brake set and hit in first gear if you're pointed uphill. You notice I have a wheel chock over here just to keep it from rolling in case the emergency brake fails. You notice I've already got the jack under there, jacked it up, already taken the lug nuts off, as you can see there, and I've already got the jack stand in place. So now all that's left to do is simply pull the wheel off. Now this one here, the driver's side front, will be going to the passenger side rear, and the passenger side rear tire will be coming up here to the driver's side front, and vice versa for the passenger side front to driver side rear. I'll get into more of that in just a minute. Alright guys, you've got your truck already in position, all your safety precautions in place, it's good to go. So just now that we've just simply pulled the wheel off and put it to the back of the truck to be changed, just wanted to give you an idea of what to look for. Alright, as you generally have this as your work area, notice your bushings. Now if you notice, these are red and not black or crumbled or just simply missing like most of your guys' trucks are. I replaced those in another video when I did the radiator core support replacement. I'll throw a link up right here for that. And now that you've got that out of the way, notice your steering here. The boot is intact, free of cracks, no issues. You notice that there's no bends in the tie rod ends. The sleeve still intact, no clean metal showing that nothing's rotated out of place. As far as the spring goes, it's not collapsed, it's not broken. Your shock, mine's been replaced, it's not broken or collapsed or rusting out. Your brake line itself is not leaking, there's no visible deformations, there's no leaks over here where it mounts to the caliper. Speaking of calipers, the 1993 and older trucks that use the 2-pin version versus the 2 13mm bolts, such as the 1994 version and up, you have a caliper pin here and one down here. These I recommend replacing every time that you do a brake replacement, such as pads or if you have to replace your caliper. Reason being, they have rubber right in the center that allows them to collapse, and over the course of 3 to 5 years or 15 to 20 years in the case of most of these trucks. Rubber deteriorates and allows that to collapse and the pin to slide out. Now what that will do, even if one is out, the other one will hold it in place, but it allows it to cant over to the side, thus wearing out either your inside brake shoe, your brake shoe, or outside brake pad. Sorry, there's brake pads on both sides there. I've had this happen, so what I do is I just simply replace those pins. You can get them at any part store for roughly $5 a set. Comes in a kit of 2, one for top, one for bottom. And on the way in, I actually put a little dab of grease. It can be the same grease that you use to grease your tie rod ends and drive shaft with. Can be white lithium grease, anything just to give it a long life of not being rusted in spot that it'll cant over to the side and cause you issues with your brake pads. Now second of all, speaking with your brakes, if you'll notice I have some fine lines. Right here I can feel a lip on my brake rotor from the years of use. You notice that I do have surface rust all over, but my lug nuts are all intact, no strip threads, no breakage. That's, you can't just wiggle one out or there's not just one missing. My dust cap is in place. It does have a bit of a grease leak around it, which at 20 some years old it's not an issue. One day I'll get around to doing a bearing repack video for you guys. But back to the brake rotor itself. These should be, when you do your brake checks, things like that, you should be able to spin it over and it spin roughly 2 to 3 times freely. You do hear a bit of a hiss. That is because you don't want a bit of gap between your pad material itself and the rotor. That way that whenever you do apply your brakes, it's already there with a fine little amount of pressure, so it just squeezes and there's no smack. The smack can either shatter this, or it can shatter your pad material and cause uneven wear and a whole hell of a lot of mess. But anyways, back to what we're doing. If you want to know if you need to have your brake rotors turned, simply drag your nail across the surface that you're seeing being worn away and use your finger. Now I can visibly see and feel a deformation there, right there, where this rotor needs to be turned down. Most shops do it for 20 bucks a side. You pull in, they do all the bearing pulling out because the wheel bearings will come out with the 2-wheel drive versions. 4-wheel drive's a little more it's got a little more in-depthness to it, but generally about 40 bucks will get you set up that your bearings are put back in correctly and your rotors are machined down to a nice smooth new surface material. Now also notice the thickness of your brake rotors. Mine's nice and thick and has plenty of room, good for another 1 to 5 turnings depending on how deep the groove gets. Deeper the groove, the deeper it's got to be machined across the board. Thinner the top is going to be from here to here. Like I said, 1 to 5, it just depends. Might even get more if I just keep it up at a minute amount each time. But just to keep going, make sure your dust shield is intact, not rotting out or falling off, or in some cases I've seen them bent over inside and rubbing your brake rotor. That's an issue. It's just got a few bolts on the back, no problem. Some people actually just remove them. I kind of like the idea of keeping them there, but on the flip side it can allow rocks to get caught like right through here that would normally just fall down and be out of the way. It can hold them against your brake rotor, and then you're screwed because you've got big nice scores that's going around and you're going to have more brake work done. But moving on, notice that your radius arms are nice and intact. There's no rotted out spots. Dirt tends to lay on the inside of this bottom level here. I recently replaced these bushings. That was a big pain in itself. A side note here, it looks like somebody has beaten me to the punch replacing this particular parts. It's the radius arm mounts. These are generally welded in by Ford. I mean, not welded in, but riveted in by Ford. Somebody beat me to the punch, replaced it. You see the bolts, so it's nice and easy. Just unbolt it and move on in case I ever do have an issue. Now, it does have surface rust on it, but it's nothing other than surface scale rust, nothing major. But that's it for your overview of just what to look for. Again, look at your shocks, make sure that it's not compressed more so than what it should be. Notice that the outside doesn't have anything stuck in it, no rocks, no grass and dirt and crap. Notice that there's no leaks too. These have oil in them, which also, just as a side note on that, the more you use your suspension, such as off-road, the hotter the oil becomes and the rougher your ride becomes. So just a side note for you guys for that. But other than that, we'll be moving to the back with brake drums. Just give you an overview on that in just a minute whenever I set everything up for the back side. And then after that, it's just repeat the process on the other front side and rear, and then you're good to go. Remember, tighten your lug nuts up. 95 pound-feet of torque is what it's required for a 92 F-150. So just wanted to throw some specs out there. Also, these wheel studs here, if they are to be replaced, it's not a hard process. Most, if they break off, you can put a punch in there, drive them back out. It's not a hard process. But moving on to step 3 here. Alright guys, we're on the rear wheels now. Quick overview, this thing is on a hillside and I really don't feel safe the way it's at, so it's going to be very short, sweet, and to the point. Again, lug nuts and wheel studs all accounted for, no breaks, no strips in the threads, nothing like that, no obvious signs of cracking around the brake drum. Since again I'm in the precarious situation I am in, we will not be pulling the wheel drum off. There'll be another video when I'm on much flatter land. Just quick overview. Again, make sure your shock is in good shape, no rusting, no leaking of the oil. Make sure your leaf springs are all accounted for, no breaks, no missing leaves like I've seen on some trucks. Make sure that the little clamp right there is in place. Mine is missing one in the back. It's not a big issue, but it just kind of irritates me. Notice your U-bolts are all in attendance. 4 nuts, 2 U-bolts, no cracks, no deformations, bends, nothing like that. Make sure your frame is in good shape. Notice back here your rear leaf spring hangers. Those tend to rust out really quickly on these trucks. About 25 bucks and about 2 hours of work, you can have a new one put in. It's 4 rivets, that's all it is. 4 bolts come with it. Same with the front up here. Both tend to rust out really quickly on these OBS trucks. Just kind of quick glance, make sure that your differential is not leaking from the pinion in the front or the seal in the back. Just a quick overview, your splash guards are in place and accounted for. I think that takes up pretty much everything right here. Also make sure that you don't see any leaks on the back side here from your wheel cylinder, or leaking brake fluid from the bottom of your drum from the wheel cylinder leaking on the inside. So that'll conclude this portion really quickly.